On a summer evening in London's fashionable Notting Hill, a tired and battered dark green Ford Transit van, parked on a residential street there, might have looked out of place, but they were a common sight at the time. Hiding in the back were half a dozen detectives waiting impatiently for the action to begin. We'd borrowed the van from the friendly fleet manager of a construction company and knew that we couldn't make it look any worse than it already was after several tough years of serving the road-building industry. It was a perfect Trojan horse. The back of the van smelled of road tar, an assault on the nostrils, especially after a long day parked in the hot sun. Every panel of the bodywork warm to the touch. The tree-lined street was giving way to the sweet, refreshing, cooler evening air. There were just a few people walking by with purpose, yet casually. They all seemed to have somewhere to go for the evening, perhaps a beer garden or to sit outside at a busy eatery, I imagined with envy. Cars were driven with windows down, sharing the reverberating bass of their stereos with the world. It was the typical London summer vibe of the time. A few spaces down the road from our road builder's van sat an equally tired Volkswagen Golf GTI. It was an unmarked police car that was also at the end of its service, and we dressed it down a little to make it look the part. We took off one of the plastic bump strips on the passenger side door, removed all the wheel caps, and replaced the car's aerial with a bent coat hanger. When new, this car would have been quite desirable, but it now offered the appearance of someone who couldn't have afforded to have one then and could barely afford to run one now. An aspirational old beta car, if ever I'd seen one. It was just turning dark as the undercover officer in the driver's seat of the VW sat nervously waiting for his target to turn up. Aaron was young, arrogant, and late as usual. He was also a very active street robber with a flair for violence who liked to threaten women with a knife before relieving them of their valuables. Like a predator stalking its prey, he'd look for those wearing well-cut office attire, carrying designer handbags and expensive killer shoes. He knew they'd have something worth taking and would be unlikely to cause any trouble, unlike some of the more streetwise, sports, shoe-wearing savvy commuters who might try to run or even put up a fight. Aaron's modus operandi involved following lone women as they left underground stations and, when they were in a quieter side street, he'd pounce and hold a knife to their throat and frighten them into handing over whatever they had. Purses, bags, cash, watches, he'd take anything of value. The victims would get over their material losses, but all were shocked and upset by the experience to the extent that they weren't very good witnesses. No one could identify him from mugshots, and reactive investigations to build a case against him failed every time. It was frustrating because we had various intelligence sources, and so we knew it was him, but we couldn't prove it. Other teams had mounted surveillance operations, static observations on the tube stations he stalked, and had even tried using an undercover officer as a decoy to catch him in the act, to no avail. Police teams would have to be very lucky with their timing, and such techniques were time-consuming, resource-intensive, and expensive. The odds were on his side.